Happy Friday, and thanks for joining me today on Fridays with Flora. And this is going to be a third installment in my Fridays with Flora about Christmas baking. If you've seen my other two, I explain how to get ahead of some crazy baking, right? Because December's crazy and I tend to be a crazy baker. I'm going to show you my crazy cookie plate. Ta-da! This one's from 2013. I can honestly say I think one or two have made it onto this plate, so I think there might be even more now, but I have my old standbys. And one of my standbys is my chocolate hazelnut biscotti. And, you know, being first generation Italian, biscotti is a cookie that's near and dear to my heart. My mother makes just very simple, basic ones. This chocolate hazelnut is a little richer and more decadent, but, you know, hey, it's Christmas. But, you know, biscotti are very labor intensive. Not that they're, I shouldn't say that. I mean, they just take a lot of time. It's not that they're hard to make, it's just time consuming. And the double baking does eat into baking time. So you definitely, if you're going to bake this many cookies in a day, you don't want to be spending a lot of time with that dough and creating the logs for the biscotti. So I'm going to show you how to get these biscotti halfway there and then popped in the freezer. And then on baking day, as you pull out your dough, pull this out early in the morning because the log will take longer to defrost, but you know, it'll defrost by the time, you know, mid-afternoon comes, and then you can focus on your biscotti and bake them off and cut them. So it'll save you a lot of time. So come join me in the kitchen as we get our Italian on and our Christmas on as we make some biscotti. So to get started on our biscotti today, got my food processor out, and this is a unique biscotti recipe that I found years ago through Williams-Sonoma. There's a couple of, you know, chocolate hazelnut biscotti recipes out there. Some use butter. This one is egg-based and uses less shortening, but they turn out really, really nice. So the first thing you have to do with the food processor is process some semi-sweet chocolate, about a half a cup. You can use squares and just chop them up. It's easier for me just to use the semi-sweet chips because they're already, if you will, chopped. So, and then add a cup of light brown sugar. And that's firmly packed brown sugar. I'm going to process this together until fine. You're looking for that deeper brown sugar color, and nothing really, no big pieces, just really fine pieces of chocolate. I think we're there. So set this aside. Now we're going to work on our dry ingredients. To get started with our dry ingredients, we're going to start with flour, 1 3/4 cups. And we're going to add Dutch processed cocoa, 1/3 of a cup. And this is one of my favorites, to roast. And there is a difference between Dutch process and regular cocoa. I do believe I go into this on my blog, but honestly, just do research on the internet. Many people have approached this subject. And it's important to follow your leavening instructions on Dutch versus regular. If you need to substitute regular, you have to be careful with your leavening. Dutch process is more alkaline, so usually, I know I made a little mess here. It's a little Julia Child thing going on here. Usually to do Dutch process leavening, you use baking powder. It's more alkaline. Now, if you use a natural cocoa, it's more acidic, and you would use baking soda. The interesting thing with this recipe is actually the leavening is baking soda, which I'm going to grab. So we need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which, like I said, isn't typical because this is also very alkaline. I will say that biscotti don't really rise that much. You don't want them to rise that much, actually. So you don't want that much leavening anyway. And if I forgot to mention, 1/3 cup of the Dutch processed cocoa. We're looking for 1½ tablespoons of the instant espresso. Looking for 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which is 1/2, so there you go. And give this a quick mix. So for our wet ingredients, we're going to start with 3 eggs. I'm going to give them just a little bit of a whip. 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract, which is going to bring out that nut flavor that we are looking for. And 1¼ teaspoon of vanilla, so just a hair over what's usual. This is 1/2, so, and then 1/2. Give this a nice whip. So the next phase is getting our sugar chocolate in there, which, remember, we processed. I'm going to do this in 2. All right, second addition. This is the brown sugar. Mix it on low. Now we're going to gradually add our dry ingredients. Now I'm going to do it in 2, maybe 3 helpings. So go slow. And it's going to start getting pretty stiff. You might have to do this last batch by hand, but let's see. So what we have here is some really stiff dough, and we're going to turn this out onto a floured silpat in a sec. But the final ingredients for chocolate hazelnut biscotti, I'll check my finger, is hazelnuts. 1 cup. I got some pre-chopped hazelnuts actually at Aldi, toasted them in a pan, and then I chopped them up a little bit more because for biscotti you don't want giant chunks of nuts. You want smaller chunks of nuts. So this you're going to kind of fold in as much as you can with your spatula. I've cleaned off my work surface and put a silpat work surface down, and what's great about this is, I don't know if you can tell in camera, but there's measurements on the edges, and I've mixed most of my hazelnuts in. I'm going to turn this out if you feel like you didn't mix your hazelnuts that well, at this point you can do a little kneading. Just to make sure things are well combined. It's very sticky, so now what we want are 2 logs, about 12 inches in length. So split your dough in half, because this makes about 2. And you're going to measure. You can use your sides, but we're looking for about this long. So this has to get worked. So that's what we're looking for. Let's do that with the second one. And there we are. 2 logs about 12 inches in length. It's about 4 to 5 inches roughly in width. Get some saran wrap or plastic wrap, and we're going to wrap these up tightly in plastic wrap and then in tin foil. If you've been following, you know, the Christmas cookie bake series, you'll know this drill. I place these on top of each other to conserve on tin foil. And label. And that's it. We're going to freeze them, and then the day of baking, I'm going to pull them out. These biscotti take the longest out of all the cookies I'm going to be baking that day, defrosting and baking. So I let these sit out on a baking sheet quite a few inches apart. You can put each log on a separate baking sheet if you want. You just got to be able to flip them during baking. You're baking them at a very low temperature, I believe at 300. And then you have to wait till they're defrosted though. So I let them sit out while I get the other cookies baking, and because these take the longest, I do these last. Because they take a while, then you have to slice them up and bake them again. So that's how biscotti go. So you cook them at 300, you wait till they're nice and puffy, you pull them out, you let them set for about 15 minutes, then you put them on a cutting board and slice them up and then bake them on both sides. So that's that. These are all ready for baking day, so I'm gonna go down to the freezer. Thank you for joining me on Fridays with Flora. Bye, I gotta go clean my hands. Look at my hands. All right. See you next week, bye-bye.